Hi, welcome to this episode of History Hunters. I'm here at a beautiful cemetery in Central California called Turlock Memorial Park. I come here often because I've got two sets of great-grandparents here. I have two grandfathers buried here, and I've got a grandmother who's buried here, so I pay visits to them. I also brought you here to talk about the outlaw Bill Dalton, who was shot and killed in Oklahoma, but brought out to California to be buried here. I also came here to tell you a little bit about Wesley Berry, one of the first child stars who was in silent pictures, but I recently found out that there's a famous comic book artist that's buried right over here, and I'm going to tell you all about it on this episode of History Hunters. Dave is buried right here. Dave Stevens, who's responsible for this character, the Rocketeer. July 29th, 1955 to March 11th, 2008. He's been gone for 13 years now. I'm just going to set the Rocketeer that I purchased right here so I can talk about him. This headstone is the type of headstone that you would expect from a creative force like Dave Stevens. It's of a smiling, slobbering bulldog wearing a French beret type hat. And the ribbon reads, "Art for Arf's sake." Of course, Arf being the sound of a dog bark. And you'll see right there that it says E Slurpus Icum. So, E Slurpus Icum. Very cool. Following several years of struggling with the uncommon hairy cell leukemia, which caused a gradual reduction in his artist output, Stevens died on March 11th, 2008, here in Turlock. He was just 52. I researched online and could not find any connection as to why Dave Stevens died here in Turlock of leukemia and why he's buried here, other than possibly the fact that his family lived here and took care of him during his illness. I understand he was ill for a couple of years. Dave Stevens was born in 1955 in Linwood, California, but grew up in Portland, Oregon. His family returned to San Diego, where he attended San Diego City College. In 1975, he went to work for cartoonist Russ Manning, drawing Tarzan and Star Wars newspaper comic strips. In 1977, he was drawing storyboards for Hanna-Barbera's animated TV shows, including Super Friends and the Godzilla Power Hour, where he worked with veteran comic artist Doug Wildley, creator of Johnny Quest. Johnny Quest was one of the Saturday morning cartoon shows that I used to watch with my brothers. Stevens also worked in animation and film, joining the art studio of illustrators William Stout and Richard Hescock in Los Angeles. He also worked on the storyboards for Raiders of the Lost Ark for George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. And he also worked on the storyboards for Michael Jackson's Thriller video. In 1980, he married longtime girlfriend Charlene Brinkman. The marriage only lasted 6 months after they were married, but interestingly, I guess they left on good terms because she continued to model for him. Dave Stevens released his first Rocketeer comic book in 1982. Proved to be very successful. One of the most successful features to emerge from the burgeoning independent comics movement. I would actually go as far as saying that Cliff Secord is modeled after Dave Stevens himself. Now, it's no secret that Cliff Secord's girlfriend in that series was actually Betty Page. Betty Page was an old pinup queen from the 1950s, known for her straight bang cut. Now, he befriended Betty Page and helped her get recognized once again, and also enabled her to get paid for some of the posters and photographs that became popular as her career resurged. What's not commonly known is that the babe in Rocketeer was actually modeled after the body of Brink Stevens, his ex-wife. So you had the face of Betty Page, the body of Brink Stevens. Stevens also used Betty Page's image in other illustrations as well, which helped bring about a renewed interest in her past modeling career. After discovering that Page was living nearby, Stevens became friends with her and helped arrange for her to receive royalties from various publishers for the use of her image and reprints of many of her glamour and pinup shots. Rocketeer was kind of influenced by Rocket Man. It was a 1940s and 1950s comic book character. In 1985, Stevens sold the rights to Rocketeer to Disney and was also co-producer of the film. In 1991, we all got to see The Rocketeer for the first time in motion picture theaters. I kind of liked the movie because it was shot in the 1940s, took place in the 40s. My kids liked it as well, especially that part where he says, "It's all part of the show, folks, it's all part of the show." The Rocketeer goes up, saves the clown who's in trouble on his biplane high over this air show. In the movie, a cocky stunt pilot named Cliff Secord, played by Bill Campbell, falls in love with the beautiful actress Jenny Blake, played by Jennifer Connelly. He discovers a jetpack hidden in a biplane, straps on the rocket and a flashy helmet that comes with it, and becomes the high-flying hero, the Rocketeer. But when Nazis want to use the rocket to invade other nations, Cliff must use his alter ego to protect Jenny from the evil actor Timothy Dalton and save the day. After the movie came out, Stevens continued to work on Rocketeer for an adventure magazine and graphic novels, even a hardcover edition. Because he committed extensive research and was meticulously detailed in his drawings, he worked slowly on the projects. Before his death, though, plans were in motion for a hardcover edition collecting the entire Rocketeer series for the first time, due originally in October 2009. Of course, he died in March of 2008. His illness stifled his energy and output, so he chose an artist by the name of Laura Martin to finish the project. As soon as it was released, it was a sellout. Since this video is going to be a little bit short, I hope you would indulge me in showing you some of my great-grandparents' graves, as well as some of my grandparents' graves. Right here is my great-grandparents, Arthur and Enza Hamilton. They were my dad's grandparents. They come from Colorado. They came out to California. He was involved in some turkey production. I remember my great-grandmother. She had a stroke. I don't know if it was before or after my great-grandfather passed away, but she was in a rest home facility, and I remember she had some difficulty remembering things, and she would wrap her knuckles on her skull and say, "Knock, knock, no one home." She was a sweet lady. Died in 1969 and 1971, respectively. So a couple of years ago, I did a feature on Bill Dalton, the famous outlaw who's buried here at the Turlock Memorial Park. He's actually buried off in that corner over there, and my grandfather's buried over here. He's just 11 rows away from Bill Dalton. My grandfather died at a very young age. He was 37 years old. He was a native of New York. He came out to California. He met my grandmother in Colorado first. Apparently my grandfather, who was my dad's dad, had some mental issues. I think he was experiencing schizophrenia. And of course, I don't think they knew how to take care of patients like that back then. They stuck him in the state mental hospital in Stockton. The story is that in 1946, in December, he was kicked in the midsection and he developed an abscess and he passed away. Now the tragic thing about that is he had 3 young sons and a young wife. My grandmother was notified by letter that he had passed away, and I think she got the letter 2 days after his death. Now there is a haunting picture of the 3 boys around this grave. My Uncle Dickie's got his arms on top of the headstone there. My dad is off to the left of this picture right here, and my Uncle Leonard is off to the right. I think what's kind of sad is the little holders for the flowers have been cemented in. It's like he's been completely forgotten and people stopped coming by to bring flowers and such. But yeah, he's a grandfather I certainly never knew. I think I have some of his features. Of course, my dad hardly remembers him. Very sad to lose somebody that young. I often marvel at the fact that I've lived a lot longer than my grandfather has. I have to walk across this vast lawn here to get to my mom's parents' grave. They were without a doubt the closest ones to me. And here's the grave of my mom's parents, my grandparents, Chester and Onita Dodd. He passed away in 2007. She passed away 2015. My grandparents came out here from Oklahoma to the Central Valley of California, and he worked in the fields. She was a housewife. She also worked in the cannery. She also raised 4 children, which was a huge job, especially for those times. She had a very difficult time. My grandparents were very active in my life. They were very close to me. In fact, I spent a lot of weekends with them at their ranch down in Merced County. Went to church with them quite regularly. I remember my grandfather was always pushing the ice creams and slushies. He would have this machine where he put ice in it, ground it down, almost made like snow cones. We just loved those things, man. So my grandparents are buried here, and right over here is her brother, my great uncle, who fought in Europe during World War II. My great uncle Carl died October 21st, 1996. He saw a lot of action in Europe. He died in the Bay Area. And right over here, I have to show you my great grandparents are buried right here. These are the parents of my grandmother, Anita Weck and Grace Cranford. They were also from Oklahoma, had a very difficult time in their life. My great-grandfather worked on the railroad back in Oklahoma and came out here, worked in the fields. He also worked in the shipyards, the Oakland shipyards. And she was a housewife. She also worked, I believe she worked in turkeys or chickens. Most of the jobs out here in the Central Valley are agricultural jobs. I have a funny story to tell about my great-grandparents. Now, they had a little garden behind their house in Livingston, and one day he came back there and he found somebody stealing some of his produce. So he went and got his gun, put it on him until the police were called, and the poor culprit who was caught in the act turned to my grandmother and said, "He won't shoot, Willie." She replied, "No comment." So I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of History Hunters. I hope that you enjoyed a little bit off the beaten path of what we normally talk about on this program, but it's history nonetheless, even if it's comic book history and personal history of mine. And I would love to have you as a subscriber. We try to do unique and interesting topics that nobody else does, and I don't think anybody's done this topic before, but I want to thank you. If you could give us a comment, we would appreciate it. A thumbs up. So that you don't miss a future episode, we would ask that you hit the notification bell as well. Thank you so much.